This is the story of something that happened to a woman named Mia, and those who've heard it rarely walk into a store on Black Friday without thinking twice. It was a cold November night, the kind where frost clung to car windshields like tiny, silver claws, and the wind sliced through coats with invisible knives. Thanksgiving had just ended, and across the city, while most people were sinking into couches, their bellies full of turkey and pie, Mia was prepping for what she called the real holiday. She'd always treated Black Friday like a sport. Every year, she marked the calendars, memorized store layouts, made lists of deals and backup deals in case things sold out. It wasn't about greed for her. It was the thrill. A game. A hunt. And that year, the prize was a 70-inch smart TV. Discounted beyond belief, limited stock, no pre-orders. First come, first served. The kind of deal that made people fight each other in parking lots. Mia was ready. She arrived at the mall around 2 a.m., confident she was ahead of the crowd. Her breath fogged the windshield as she pulled into the half-empty parking lot, and for a moment she smiled. The night was hers. She wrapped herself tightly in her coat, grabbed her thermos of coffee, and headed toward the store entrance. But her smile faded as soon as she turned the corner and saw the line. It was already massive, longer than she had expected, with people bundled in blankets and hoodies, forming a snake of shuffling bodies that curled down the sidewalk. At first glance, nothing seemed unusual. Just tired shoppers keeping warm. But something didn't feel right. There was a strange stillness in the air, no chatting, no laughter. Normally, these lines buzzed with excitement. Shoppers joked about the deals, checked their phones, sipped their hot drinks. But this line, it was too quiet. Mia noticed several people just standing still, not speaking or even fidgeting. One woman stood perfectly upright, eyes wide open, staring straight ahead like a mannequin. A man leaned against a wall, mouth slightly open, unmoving for minutes. It wasn't just exhaustion. It was unnatural. An eerie kind of frozen. Trying to shake the feeling, Mia joined the back of the line. She found herself behind a tall man in a long black coat. His hood was up, hiding his face. He stood with perfect posture, arms at his sides, not shifting his weight or glancing around like everyone else. There was something strange about the way he held himself. Too still. Too balanced. The wind blew sharply, catching the corners of Mia's coat and sending her hair into her face. The man's coat, though loose and long, didn't sway in the wind. It hung stiffly, like it was weighed down or anchored by something unseen. Feeling the tension crawl up her back, Mia tried to distract herself. She sipped her coffee and tried to check her phone, but the screen wouldn't turn on. She tapped the button, held it, but nothing happened. It had been fully charged. Frustrated, she looked around to see if anyone else was using their phone. That's when she realized no one was. Not a single screen glowed in the dark. No one was scrolling, texting, filming, or calling. Even in silence, that was unusual. People practically lived on their phones during these early morning sales. The line moved slightly, inching forward, and Mia stepped closer behind the man in the coat. She tried to say something, to make small talk, break the tension. Cold. "Night, huh?" she muttered. No response. She cleared her throat and tried again, a little louder. "Been here long?" The man didn't turn. He didn't nod or even twitch. Mia frowned and leaned slightly to the side, trying to catch a glimpse of his face under the hood. But all she saw was darkness, so deep it looked like someone had cut out his face and left a hole. The lights above the store flickered once, then steadied. The automatic doors were still closed, but she could see employees inside getting ready, pulling carts of electronics, unlocking display shelves. She turned her attention back to the line. Still, no one spoke. One man ahead shifted slightly, and the sound of his shoe scraping the ground was loud. Too loud. Every tiny sound echoed, as if the world had gone quiet just to listen. Then came a noise, deep and metallic, like a door creaking open in a haunted house. The front doors began to slide apart, signaling the start of the sale. The crowd should have erupted with energy. There should have been cheering, people pushing forward, rushing toward the door. But the crowd moved slowly, like a train gaining speed. No one shouted. No one ran. Even those at the front walked calmly into the store, eyes fixed forward, ignoring everything around them. Mia followed, staying close behind the man in black. As they stepped through the glass doors, she expected warmth to hit her from the store's heaters. But the air inside was cold, colder than outside. Her breath still fogged in front of her. The lights inside flickered slightly, and then steadied, again. The music that usually played over the speakers, upbeat holiday tunes, was absent. The silence was even heavier indoors. The man in black glided forward, not bothering with a cart. His steps made no sound. His coat still didn't move. And Mia, drawn in by a mix of curiosity and nervousness, followed. Something in her told her not to lose sight of him. Something in her wanted to know what he was, or maybe what he wasn't. And, in that strange, frozen silence, with her heart pounding and the cold creeping into her bones, Mia took the first steps toward a nightmare she didn't yet understand. What had started as a normal shopping trip was about to become something else entirely. Something not from this world. Something watching her. Waiting. And the worst part? She hadn't even reached the electronics section yet. Inside the store, something about the air felt wrong. It wasn't just cold. It was lifeless, as if the building had been drained of everything human. Fluorescent lights above flickered gently, casting weak shadows that seemed to shift without cause. The sound of movement echoed through the aisles, but there were no voices, no beeping registers, no music playing softly over the speakers like in every other store on a Black Friday morning. Shoppers moved forward slowly, their faces blank, their arms dragging empty carts behind them. Everything looked normal on the surface. Shelves were full, the displays were bright, but beneath it all, there was an invisible pressure in the air, something heavy that sat on the chest like a hand. Mia stepped further into the store, her shoes squeaking against the polished tile, though the sound seemed far too loud, too sharp. The crowd parted before her, not in kindness, but more like they were being pulled elsewhere, as though some silent force had taken over their will. She followed the long black coat that drifted ahead of her like a shadow with no source. The man who wore it had already reached the electronics section. No one else seemed to notice him. He stood still, right in front of the giant television display. The same model she had waited weeks to get her hands on. 70 inches, curved, crystal clear, and too good to be true at that price. And there he was, blocking it completely. Her steps slowed. Something instinctual screamed at her to turn around, to leave, to forget the whole thing. But something else, something deeper, pushed her forward. Perhaps it was curiosity. Perhaps it was something darker. She reached the end of the aisle and stopped just behind the man. He had not moved since he arrived. He stood as still as a statue, hands by his sides, head tilted slightly downward toward the screen, though his hood still hid whatever lay beneath it. The longer she stared, the more she felt it, like the space around him shimmered slightly, like heat rising off pavement in summer. The feeling wasn't warm, though. It was ice cold, creeping across her skin like frost. A polite word formed in her throat, a simple "excuse me," but it died before it left her lips. Something about the presence before her made speaking feel wrong, like breaking a rule in a sacred place. She cleared her throat and stepped slightly to the side, trying to see around him, trying to catch even a glimpse of the TV she had come all this way for. That's when she felt it. Not a touch, not a shove, but a sensation. Like walking into a wall of fog that froze the lungs and turned blood to slush. Her skin prickled, and a sharp chill slid up her spine. It lasted only a second, but it was enough to send her stepping back quickly, her heart racing. She looked around, expecting others to react, to laugh, to ask what was wrong. But what she saw turned her blood cold. The shoppers who had been milling around the aisles had stopped, completely. Frozen mid-movement. A man pushing a cart was caught in mid-step, 1 foot off the ground, unmoving. A woman holding a phone had her hand raised, but the screen was still. No light from it, no response. Another man stood with his mouth wide open as if shouting something, but no sound came. Their eyes were wide, all of them, wide and staring as though frozen by terror or by something unseen. Time had stopped for them. Mia was the only one who moved, and the man in black. He turned, slowly, deliberately, like a machine without urgency, but with total awareness. As his body shifted, the hood fell back ever so slightly. Mia's eyes met the darkness beneath it. Not a face, not flesh, not even shadow. What she saw beneath that hood was pure void, an empty hole where a head should be. Not black fabric, not illusion, a true absence of everything. A blankness so deep it made her dizzy. Then, without sound, without lips, a whisper echoed directly inside her mind. "You wanted something, didn't you?" The voice was soft, impossibly soft, like the brush of silk across the brain. It carried no emotion, no male or female tone, just words placed carefully inside the mind. Every instinct inside her screamed. Muscles locked, knees stiffened. The whisper came again. "Give me your name, and it's yours." The words felt sticky, like they clung to her thoughts. She tried to move, to speak, to run, but her body responded slowly, as if underwater. Her thoughts tangled, unsure if this was a dream or madness. Around her, the store remained frozen, the people stuck in silent horror, some with tears hanging, mid-drop from their eyes, others twisted mid-scream with no breath behind it. The lights above flickered again, briefly casting everything into shadow before returning. The man, or whatever he was, stood waiting, unmoving. The void beneath the hood felt like it stared into her, not at her. Searching, measuring, expecting something. She wanted to scream. She wanted to run. Instead, she backed away, slowly, heart hammering inside her chest. 1 step, 2. And then she turned and bolted. Down the aisle, past the shelves of games and gadgets, past the cart-filled lanes of appliances and fake smiles. Printed on sale banners, Mia ran. The sound of her shoes echoed like gunshots in the frozen silence. No alarms, no employees, just that pressure, that cold, that sense that something followed without footsteps. She passed the checkout counters, where cashiers stood frozen, hands mid-scan. One of them had a single tear frozen on her cheek. The others looked glassy-eyed, as if something inside them had already been taken. Then came the doors. The same ones that had opened gently hours ago. They were open now. And beyond them, the outside. World waited, normal, bright, unaware. Mia burst into the parking lot, her breath coming in ragged clouds. A car passed by on the street. Someone laughed in the distance. The world was moving again. Time had returned. People were arriving, walking toward the mall, chatting, sipping coffee, unaware of what had just happened inside. She turned back toward the store. No man in black, no frozen shoppers. The glass doors closed quietly behind her, hiding the nightmare within. And in her mind, the voice still whispered, "Give me your name." But Mia knew better now. Some deals were never meant to be accepted. The voice faded, but it never truly left. Even as the sunlight touched her skin and the normal hum of morning life returned around her, a cold thread of fear wound tightly around Mia's thoughts. The parking lot looked unchanged. Cars blinked. As people locked them, parents carried bags, laughter echoed from a nearby cafe, and yet nothing felt real anymore. Reality, once so stable, now seemed like thin glass over something ancient and watching. That store, those flickering lights, frozen people, and the black-hooded figure, remained sealed in her memory like a scar. But scars fade slowly, and some reopen when touched. For a few days, Mia stayed home. Sleep came in pieces, and when it did, it carried strange dreams. Always the same store, always the same man or thing, turning slowly toward her. Sometimes, in the dream, she answered him, gave her name, and always woke gasping, drenched in sweat, her name echoing in the air around her as though someone had just spoken it. Phones rang, emails buzzed, friends asked questions about why she never grabbed the TV she wanted so badly. Excuses were easy to make. The line was too long. Something didn't feel right. Nothing specific, nothing detailed. Telling the truth sounded impossible, as if saying it out loud would give the thing permission to return. Still, silence brought no peace. On the fourth night, something changed. Sleep never came. Shadows stretched longer than they should. The light above her kitchen table blinked twice and stayed dark. She lit a candle without thinking. Just needed something warm, something steady. The flame danced calmly until it didn't. It jumped, like something had passed through the air. The flame leaned to the left, stayed that way. Cold air brushed her arm, though the window was closed and the heat still hummed. She turned slowly. Nothing there. Yet something lingered. A scent, faint, metallic, and old. Not blood. Something worse. Something like rusted iron buried in soil, for years. The room pressed in, tighter, smaller. Her apartment, once familiar, now felt like it wasn't hers at all. Books tilted slightly off the shelves. Paintings hung crooked though no one had touched them. Even the silence had changed, heavier, denser, and then came the whisper. It slithered into the room with no warning, brushing the base of her skull like invisible fingers. Not from outside. From inside the room. Inside the mind. You left before the deal was done. The voice came with no direction, no source, just presence. A pressure behind the eyes, in the throat, in the space beneath the heart. She stumbled back, knocking over a chair. The candle's flame blew out without a breath. Darkness swallowed the kitchen in an instant. She reached for her phone, its screen already lit, without touch. A single message flashed across it. Say your name. Fingers trembling, she dropped the phone. It landed face down. The glow from the screen still shone faintly around the edges like a dying heartbeat. This wasn't just about the store anymore. Something had followed her. Or perhaps she had never truly left. A part of her had remained behind in that aisle, staring into that void. That thing had not asked for money. It had not asked for blood, only a name, a simple offering. But names carry weight, names bind, names invite, and she had almost given hers. With trembling hands, she lit another candle. Shadows danced on the walls like silent figures creeping just beyond reach. She needed to get out, to leave this place, to run far from that store, from that town, from whatever she had brushed against that night. But even as the thought formed, her body resisted. The door remained closed. Her legs refused to move. The windows wouldn't open, like the apartment had grown roots, or perhaps, like something outside now watched too closely. She began to search, through drawers, under piles of papers, for something, anything. Old journals, half-written notes, a childhood Bible gifted long ago by a distant aunt. Desperation made people believe in things they laughed at in the daylight. She opened it, flipped pages fast, hoping for words that might help. Her fingers stopped on a passage, underlined long ago. A name given in darkness is a name lost to the void. Her breath caught. This wasn't just haunting, it was claiming. Hours passed, or maybe only minutes. Time shifted strangely. The candle burned low, wax dripping in slow, thick drops. That whisper returned, softer now, more coaxing than commanding. Just a name. Yours is already known. She covered her ears. It didn't help. Sound meant nothing to something that lived outside of flesh and bone. It moved through thought, through memory, through dreams. The whisper changed, becoming voices she recognized. Her mother, her old teacher, even the tone of her own voice during childhood. It mimicked them all, one after another, peeling back her sense of self like layers. Then, the worst came. Silence. Not the gentle kind, not peaceful. This was a dead silence, the kind that buried things, that silenced cries, that swallowed breath. She stood frozen in her living room, candle flickering low, staring into nothing. But it stared back. Her eyes drifted, unblinking, to the window. Across the street, the shopping mall lights glowed. And one of them blinked, only once. But in that blink, the shape of a man in a long black coat stood beneath the sign. Still, unmoving. Then he turned. Not fully, just slightly. Just enough for her to feel the void reach across the distance. Something had returned, and it waited. Not for her to come back, but for her to speak. For the deal to be finished. Mia couldn't take her eyes off the figure across the street. The black coat, the unmoving posture. Everything about it screamed that it wasn't just a man standing there. It was something waiting. Something eternal. And it had been watching her from the moment she first walked into that store. The lights from the mall above cast a strange glow on the figure, making it appear almost spectral. The coldness she had felt inside that store rushed back, flooding her chest, suffocating her. She tried to look away, but her gaze refused to leave the figure, as if it held her mind in place. Her hand trembled, her fingers itching to reach for her phone. But something deep inside her said that it wouldn't matter. No matter how far she ran, how much she tried to ignore it, the deal had already begun. She had already given a part of herself away. The man in the black coat, no, not a man, wasn't a person at all. Mia could feel it in the marrow of her bones. The void beneath the hood wasn't something that could be explained by science, by logic, or by anything that made sense. It was something older, something from a time before the world had laws, before the first star had been born. It was hunger, and it had been searching for her, patiently waiting for the right moment. And that moment had come on Black Friday. The deal was far from over. Mia's thoughts twisted in panic, each one louder than the last. She needed to leave. She needed to get out of her apartment, but her body refused to obey her. Her feet felt rooted to the ground as if the very floor beneath her was sucking her down, pulling her toward something, toward that figure, toward that presence. The lights flickered again, this time more violently, casting the room into darkness, for an agonizing second before they returned. She blinked rapidly, fighting the overwhelming urge to scream, to tear her eyes away from the window. But there was something hypnotic about it. Something in the way the figure shifted slightly, as if it knew she was watching. It was almost like a game, and she was the prey. Mia took a step back, her heart pounding, but then she stopped. No, she had made it this far. She wasn't going to let whatever this thing was win. With great effort, she broke the eye contact, pulling herself away from the window. Her breath came in shallow gasps, but she refused to let panic take control. Not again. She grabbed her coat, the thick fabric comforting against her skin, and stormed out of her apartment. The cold air of the night bit at her as she stepped outside, but it didn't calm the panic swirling inside her chest. She needed answers. She had to find out what this thing was. Why had it targeted her? Why had it picked her on that Black Friday? And why couldn't she escape it? She walked quickly down the street, her eyes darting to every shadow. The street lamps were few and far between, leaving long stretches of darkness between their weak pools of light. Her steps quickened, as if she could outrun whatever was following her, but the feeling of being watched never left. She had been so sure that leaving the apartment would make everything stop, but it didn't. The presence still lingered, always, just beyond her peripheral vision, always a step behind. Mia's thoughts raced as she continued walking, trying to come up with a plan, but there were no plans that made sense. How do you fight something that exists outside the rules of reality? How could she stop it when it had already taken so much from her? The chilling truth settled in her stomach. She couldn't. Not unless she finished the deal. She had already started it. She had already been marked. The whispers from earlier seemed to echo in her head, replaying in a loop. Give me your name. It wasn't just about the name. It was about something far deeper, a trade, an exchange. The name was just the beginning. The closer she got to the mall, the stronger the feeling of dread became. The streets seemed emptier, the city quieter. People were no longer walking around, no longer out and about, enjoying the evening. It was as though the world had gone still, waiting for her to make the next move. As she neared the entrance of the mall, the security lights flickered again, just like they had inside the store. She stopped at the door, her breath freezing in the air before her. She didn't want to go back inside, but she knew she had no choice. She had to face whatever waited for her, whatever wanted her name. With a sense of finality, Mia pushed open the doors and stepped into the mall. The familiar hum of fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, but this time it sounded wrong, distorted, twisted. The air seemed too thick, too heavy. And then she saw it again, the black figure standing motionless beneath the flashing signs. No longer distant, no longer across the street. It stood right there, in front of her, blocking her path. She tried to move, to turn, but her body froze. The void beneath the hood seemed to draw her in. She could feel the pull, the weight of it, like 1,000 invisible hands tugging at her very soul. Mia opened her mouth to speak, to ask questions, to demand answers, but nothing came out. Her voice was lost in her throat, suffocated by the presence of that figure. And then, the whisper again. Not in her ears this time, but deep within her, filling the corners of her mind. Say your name. She wanted to scream. She wanted to fight, but her body betrayed her. She couldn't. She couldn't stop it. The voice wasn't asking anymore. It was commanding. Say your name. In that moment, she understood the deal. The void had been waiting, not for her to offer it freely, but for it to be taken. The name was the key. It wasn't just a word. It was a tether, a bond between the world she knew and the one she couldn't escape. Her mouth opened, her lips parting without control. And just as the name was about to leave her, just as she was about to give in to the emptiness inside the hood, she heard a distant voice. Not the voice inside her head, not the voice of the thing, but a real voice. Someone calling her name. Mia's heart lurched, her head snapping to the side, and in that moment, everything stopped.